Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. We're back with another historical episode where we play some games and take another look at mail time, where we get to deliver posts with some really questionable animals, but we also worry about who decided to employ us for this job. Today's talk regarding history is having a look at the ancient Pict people. Pict, possibly from the Latin picti, which means painted, were one of the ancient people who lived in what is today Scotland, from Caithness to Fife. Their name may refer to their custom of body painting or possibly tattooing. At first, Picti was a pejorative term used by the Romans, but once we get to the Dark Ages around 600 or 700, it's clear that something had happened and those tribes have now come to self-identify as Picti. The difficulties with Pictish history and archaeology arise from the fact that people who were called Picts were a fundamentally heterogeneous group with little in the way of cultural uniformity. The people who were called Picts by outsiders in late antiquity were very different from those who later adopted it for themselves in terms of language, culture, religion and politics. The Picts are best known for their amazing symbol stones which can be found throughout Scotland. However, recent research has uncovered fantastic new elite settlements, discovered Pictish monasteries, and have even managed to provide dates for these famous stones. The Picts were an Iron Age people who lived in the northern and eastern parts of what is now Scotland, flourishing from approximately the 4th century AD to the 9th century. Originally, the Picts were tribal peoples organised into loose confederations and tribes, but they later created two politically and militarily powerful kingdoms and dominated a large part of Scotland. The origin of the Picts is uncertain though, with some evidence suggesting that they were descendants of pre-Celtic dwellers, but they are also believed to have been originated in Iberia as hunter-gatherers, and that they moved through Lower Britain and entered Scotland around 7000 BC. Recent DNA tests have shown that the Picts were closely related to the Basques of northern Spain. The connections between northern Britain and Celtic Spain are supported by many myths and legends. The dolmens, which are standing stones, and the trailer cup and ring designs carved on stones by the prehistoric people of Iberia make their way from Spain and Portugal and northern France over to Ireland and Scotland, and represent the earliest evidence of the movement of prehistoric man from Iberia to Britain. But it should also be said that there have been few DNA studies for Pictish people, since we only have a few good samples from the Pictish heartland, and otherwise so far there hasn't been any suggestion that the Picts are different from the other Celtic Britons. We've only got a handful, probably less than a dozen, ancient DNA samples that have been processed and published. And we also have linguistic evidence that suggests they spoke a Celtic language, while another ancient origin story, probably created by the Picts themselves, says that they sailed to Scotland from ancient Scythia, which was most likely in modern-day Central Asia and parts of Eastern Europe, where classical sources such as the histories written by Herodotus in 430 BC also describe a painted people living there. This is unlikely to be true, however. This myth was probably an attempt by the Picts to locate their origins in the classical world, which was part of the trend for developing kingdoms at that time. Scholars have also argued that kings and elites sought to use such origin myths or ethnic ideology to support their power and solidify their claims to rulership. The Picts were described in 297 AD when a Roman writer spoke of the Picts attacking Hadrian's Wall. Their warfare with the Romans during the occupation was almost continual. Roman writers had spoken about the Picts as fearsome warriors, savage, barbarous, troublesome and backward. While the Celtic peoples south of modern-day Scotland become Romanised following the Roman conquest of much of Britain in 43 AD, the people in Scotland remained on the periphery of the Roman Empire, frequently clashing with the Roman legions, but never entirely succumbing to Roman rule. The Romans, after several failed attempts to conquer the peoples of Scotland, eventually erected barriers, First was Hadrian's Wall, and then the Antonine Wall, as a way of keeping the Picts and their sometime allies, the Scots, out of the south. The Picts flourished following the Roman withdrawal from Britain around 400 AD, but by the end of the 10th century AD, the Picts had seemingly vanished, after merging with the Scots and Gaels, who had originally come from Ireland. Recent scholarship is painting a fuller, more realistic picture of the Picts than the one presented by the Romans, and is shedding light on their unique culture and society, such as the lifestyle of the Picts that was based around agriculture, both the growing of crops and the rearing of animals, and we can tell from their symbol stones that animals had a special significance for the Picts. There is growing evidence from archaeological sites regarding what types of animals were eaten and what types of crops were grown, with barley and oats being the most common types uncovered. At the Pictish settlement of Port Mahomet in Easter Ross, plough pebbles were discovered. These were inserted into the edge of a 1,400-year-old wooden plough to protect it from erosion by the soil. This incredible discovery shows that the inhabitants of Port Mahomet had access to advanced technology and were involved in quite intensive agriculture for that time period. Recent excavations at Rhynie have also produced rare evidence that some elite Picts were drinking Mediterranean wine from French glass beakers 1500 years ago. The site, which was probably a house for a Pictish king or lord, also produced evidence for the creation of fine jewellery like brooches and pins, possibly being made in silver. Also, pieces of large pottery vessels like amphoras, which contain the Mediterranean wine, have also been found at the huge Pictish settlement at Tapanoff, which is just to the northeast of the highest status site at Rhynie. You can actually visit Tapanoff. It's got a little car park, so you can go up and have a look. These amazing finds demonstrate the trade connections the people living in Rhynie would have had, such as the ability to import wine and the access to precious metals such as silver, and also their technical skill as Pictish craftspeople. The Viking Age brought significant change to Britain and Ireland, but no less in Scotland than elsewhere, with the Vikings conquering and settling the islands and various mainland areas, including Caithness, Sutherland and Galloway. In the middle of the 9th century, Kettle Flatnose is said to have founded the Kingdom of the Isles, governing many of these territories, and by the end of that century, the Vikings had destroyed the Kingdom of Northumbria, greatly weakened the Kingdom of Strathclyde, and founded the Kingdom of York. In the 840s, Sinead MacAlpin, which can also translate to Kenneth MacAlpin, or MacAlpine, became king of the Picts. During the reign of Sinead's grandson, Constantine MacAda, outsiders began to refer to the region as the Kingdom of Alba rather than the Kingdom of the Picts. But it is not known whether this was because a new kingdom was established or Alba was simply a closer approximation of the Pictish name for the Picts. However, though the Pictish language did not disappear suddenly, a process of Gaelicization, which may have begun generations earlier, was clearly underway during the reigns of Constantine and his successors. By a certain point, probably during the 11th century, all the inhabitants of northern Alba had become fully Gaelicized Scots, and Pictish identity was forgotten. Henry of Huntingdon was one of the first, or at least surviving recorded historian to note this disappearance in the mid-12th century. His work became known as the Historia Anglorum. Later, the idea of Picts as a tribe was revived in myth and legend. From here, Scotland steadily moved into its feudal period, and the Picts were gone in a sense apart from the amazing carvings that they'd left us behind, so that will be where we close their chapter as well. There are a lot of conflicting theories, like whether they really did constantly wear woad blue paint, fully naked, tattooed on every inch of their bodies, and a few other details out there regarding the Picts. Still, because of how little we actually know compared to other cultures and societies around the world, and a lot of what we have written is by their enemies, but I thought they would be an interesting start for Scotland regardless. Thank you for staying and watching this video all the way to the end though. It's a bit longer than my other videos. History is something I believe everyone can enjoy and should be more widely available in different forms, not just the small amount of topics you might get in your general school class. I can count the number of different history topics I did at school from start to end on one hand, so I felt most other people would be similar if you didn't specialise it or take it further. Please don't forget to share, like and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below for what you'd like to see in the next one. Take care guys, bye bye.